There's a certain silence that settles in when you live alone, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that lingers too long. At first, it's just quiet mornings, then meals without conversation, then days where no one says your name. For many seniors, living alone is a fact of life. Children grown, spouses passed, friends moved away. And while solitude can sometimes bring peace, too much of it can quietly change your brain. Not with sudden pain or dramatic symptoms, but through small, invisible shifts that slowly wear on your memory, mood, and even your health. Research now confirms seniors who live alone for long periods face higher risks of cognitive decline, depression and anxiety, sleep disturbances, memory loss, even early dementia. Why? Because the brain is a social organ. It doesn't just crave connection, it requires it to stay active, alert, and emotionally balanced. In this video, you'll discover what happens to the brain when it goes too long without human connection. 7 subtle but serious changes you may not even notice at first. The difference between healthy solitude and harmful isolation. And simple healing steps you can take starting today, whether you live alone or not. Because the goal is not to fear being alone, it's to recognize when alone becomes too much. If you're over 60 and living alone, or if you have a parent, neighbor, or friend who does, this may be one of the most important videos you'll ever watch. Let's begin with compassion, honesty, and hope. Sign number 1, you stop talking to yourself out loud and don't even notice it. Start subtly. You used to say things like, "Where did I put my glasses?" or "Let me heat this up." But over time, the voice fades. You speak less out loud. You begin to carry thoughts silently because no one is around to hear them. And eventually, you may not even realize how quiet your inner world has become. Why this matters for your brain. Talking out loud isn't just chatter. It's a natural form of cognitive reinforcement. It helps you stay mentally organized, regulate emotions, process memory, maintain language fluency, even stimulate parts of the brain responsible for reasoning. When you stop speaking out loud, especially when living alone, those brain regions begin to receive less stimulation. It's like a house where the lights are turned off in room after room, quietly, slowly, unnoticed. Neuroscientists call this private speech. It plays a role in problem solving, motivation, and decision making. Children do it naturally, adults do it subconsciously, and seniors, especially those living alone, may lose the habit altogether. Over time, that lack of verbal processing can lead to slower mental response, memory gaps, mood flattening, reduced emotional clarity. In short, when the spoken word disappears, so does a part of the brain's rhythm. What to watch for. You no longer speak to yourself when doing chores. You eat meals in total silence. You rarely hear your own voice unless you're on the phone. You forget names, lists, or tasks more often. You feel emotionally flat or foggy without knowing why. These aren't signs of failure. They're gentle signs your mind is saying, "I miss the sound of connection," even if it's just with myself. What you can do. Start by reading out loud, even a paragraph a day. Narrate simple tasks. I'm folding towels now. Sing along with music you love. Speak a prayer, blessing, or memory aloud in the morning. Call someone, even for just 5 minutes, and speak intentionally. Your voice matters, even if no one hears it, even if it's just for you. Because speaking out loud is how your mind says, "I'm still here, I'm still thinking, I still belong." Silence can be peaceful, but too much silence can become a shadow. Don't let your voice fade in the quiet. Use it, hear it, honor it. Because the sound of your own words might just be the first step back to connection with your memory, your spirit, and yourself. Sign number 2, you stop noticing time passing and days start to blend together. It begins quietly. You wake up one morning and wonder, is it Wednesday or Saturday? You make a cup of tea and suddenly it's afternoon. No appointments, no one dropping by, no reason to change your clothes or leave the house. Eventually, the days begin to lose their shape, and so does your sense of time. Why this happens in the brain. Our brains are designed to track time using events, routines, and interaction. When you're working, socializing, or even running errands, your brain records those moments like bookmarks in a day. But when you live alone too long, there are fewer events, fewer social interactions, less stimulation to define one day from the next. This lack of mental anchors causes time to feel blurred. And the brain, especially after 60, needs regular structure to stay alert and engaged. What this does to mental health. Losing track of time might seem harmless at first, but over time it can lead to cognitive dullness. The brain becomes understimulated. Disrupted sleep wake cycles, you may stay up too late or nap excessively, mood flattening or low motivation, a sense of emotional drift, like you're just passing time instead of living. You may not feel depressed, but you also don't feel fully awake. And that's the danger of living alone too long. Not sadness, but emotional stillness that numbs the spark of daily life. What to watch for? Forgetting what day of the week it is. Losing track of time without even noticing. Skipping meals or staying in pajamas all day. Sleeping more in the daytime. Feeling like each day looks and feels the same. Not remembering what you did yesterday. These are your brain's way of saying, I need rhythm. I need structure. I need life to feel real again. What you can do. Create anchors in your day. Morning tea at the same time, an afternoon walk, or evening journaling. Use a physical calendar, cross off each day, plan one meaningful task per day, no matter how small. Listen to a daily podcast, devotional, or radio show for structure. Speak to someone, even a neighbor or delivery person, to mark human time. Your brain doesn't need a full schedule. It needs reminders that the day matters, that you are part of something moving, something alive. You are not meant to drift. You are meant to live, even in quiet seasons. So mark the morning, honor the afternoon, name the evening. Because when you reclaim your sense of time, you also begin to reclaim yourself. Sign number 3, your memory feels slower and you struggle to recall simple words or events. You're in the middle of a sentence and a word escapes you. Something simple like kettle or calendar. It hovers just out of reach, or you walk into a room and forget why. You try to recall yesterday's dinner, but it's already gone like a faint dream. When you live alone too long, these lapses may quietly increase, and not because you're aging badly, but because your brain isn't being stimulated in the ways it once was. How isolation affects memory. The brain thrives on interaction. Every conversation, every shared laugh, every question someone asks you, these all engage your memory centers. Retrieving names, recalling facts, processing thoughts in real time. But when you're alone for long periods, the brain receives fewer of these memory challenges. It's not being asked to remember out loud. And like any muscle not used, memory softens. Why this is serious. Mild memory slips are normal with age, but when you live in isolation, your brain may become slower to retrieve everyday words, less confident recalling short-term details, more passive in mental processing, vulnerable to cognitive decline over time. And the scariest part? You might not notice how much you've adapted to forgetting. You may simply avoid talking as much, or stop trying to remember certain things because there's no one around to ask. But deep inside, your brain is still longing to be engaged. What to watch for? Struggling to recall names of familiar people or objects, forgetting recent events, appointments, or routines, using vague words like thing or that place more often, feeling mentally slower or fuzzier during conversations, losing confidence in your ability to follow stories or instructions. These aren't failures. They're signs your memory misses connection. What you can do to reawaken memory. Talk out loud daily. Describe what you're doing or narrate your day. Play memory games or word puzzles. Call a friend or family member regularly. Even short chats help. Read a book and retell the chapter to yourself aloud. Look at old photos and say the names and places you remember. Every small act of remembering is like a light switch in the brain, flipping things back on. And over time, these switches reconnect. Your memory is not gone. It's waiting, waiting to be spoken to, waiting to be used, waiting for the warmth of connection, the kind that gently brings forgotten things back into the light. So if you find yourself pausing mid-sentence, don't feel ashamed, feel invited, because memory doesn't fade from age alone. It fades from silence. And now it's time to speak again. Sign before you feel emotionally numb or flat. Most days, you wake up, stretch, and start the day, but there's no real joy, no spark, no sadness either, just nothing. You go through the motions. The coffee tastes the same, the TV plays in the background, but inside you feel disconnected, not from the world, from yourself. This is what many seniors describe as feeling flat, and it's one of the most subtle yet profound effects of living alone too long. What's really going on in the brain? Your emotions are not random. They're shaped by chemistry, memory, and human interaction. When you're around others, even small moments like laughing with a neighbor, listening to a friend's story, holding a hand, can activate dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin, the feel good chemicals in your brain. But in prolonged isolation, these chemicals become understimulated. The brain stops releasing as much emotional feedback. You don't feel deeply sad, but you also stop feeling deeply anything. Why this emotional numbness matters. It often goes unnoticed because it doesn't feel painful. It just feels like emptiness, like floating. But long term, this flattening can lead to depression, disrupt sleep and energy levels, weaken motivation and cognitive engagement, even reduce immune system response. In other words, when you stop feeling, your body quietly begins to shut down parts of life. What to watch for? No longer looking forward to things you once enjoyed, rarely laughing, crying, or reacting strongly to anything, watching TV or listening to music without emotional response, feeling numb inside or emotionally distant, noticing that every day feels emotionally the same. These aren't signs of weakness, they're signs your soul is craving connection, purpose, and joy. What you can do to reignite emotion. Revisit something you once loved: music, art, gardening, prayer. Start a small act of care, send a letter, bake something for someone, water plants mindfully. Watch a film that moves you emotionally, allow yourself to cry or smile. Call someone and ask about their life. It sparks empathy. Begin a gratitude journal. Write 3 small things daily that you noticed or appreciated. Your emotions don't disappear. They simply go quiet when not invited to speak. And it's okay to invite them back gently. Feeling flat doesn't mean you're broken. It means you've gone too long without emotional nourishment. And just as flowers wilt in silence, so too does the spirit. But with a little light, a little attention, you can feel again. You can come alive again. Because even in solitude, your heart still longs to feel. And that longing is the beginning of healing. Sign number 5, you begin talking to objects, pets, or the TV. Not just for fun, but for company. You say, "Good morning" to the coffee pot. You tell the TV, "That's not true" during the news. You ask the cat, "What do you think I should eat today?" At first, it's playful, a way to pass time, but slowly it becomes your main conversation. You find yourself speaking more to things than to people, not because you've lost your mind, but because your heart still needs connection. And when no one else is around, you make do with what's there. Why this happens in the brain. The human brain is wired for dialogue. Speech, whether with people, pets, or even objects, stimulates memory, language centers, emotion regulation, social cognition. So talking to your pet or the TV isn't strange. It's your brain's way of keeping itself company. But when it becomes the only form of connection, it may be a sign that isolation has gone deeper than you realized. When it becomes a red flag. Many seniors find great comfort in talking to pets, plants, or favorite shows. That's not the issue. The concern is when these interactions replace real conversation. Days go by without talking to another human. You feel more emotionally bonded to your TV than to a friend. You begin to feel like these objects understand you better than people do. This can lead to social withdrawal, emotional delusion or detachment, reduced communication skills over time, deepening cognitive isolation. In other words, your heart is coping, but your mind is drifting. What to watch for. You speak more to your TV or pet than to people in a given day. You haven't spoken to another human in over 24 to 48 hours. You feel comforted by the presence of objects. You stop trying to call or visit anyone because this is enough. You feel hesitant or anxious when real people do reach out. These aren't signs of madness. They're signs of loneliness, wearing a friendly disguise. What you can do. Acknowledge it without shame. You're not silly, you're human. Start small. Call a friend, even for 5 minutes a day. Visit a local group, library event, or place of worship. Say yes to short invitations, even if you're tired or unsure. Consider volunteering or joining online senior groups. Human voices matter. You can still talk to your cat or plant, but balance it with real connection. You're not crazy for talking to the TV. You're craving company, and that craving is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's your brain saying, "I miss being heard. I miss being seen. Please don't forget me in this quiet place." Because you were never meant to be truly alone, not in spirit, not in mind, and not in heart. Sign number 6, you start feeling anxious in public or around people, even loved ones. You finally accept that invitation. You go to the family gathering, the church event, the small get together, but instead of joy, you feel uneasy, tense, out of place. The voices feel too loud, the conversations move too fast, and you catch yourself thinking, I just want to go home. This isn't because you've become antisocial, it's because your brain has grown unaccustomed to social rhythm. Why this happens? Social interaction requires the brain to read body language, track conversations, recall names and context, respond emotionally and appropriately. When you live alone for extended periods, those social circuits go quiet, not broken, just unused. And when suddenly turned back on, the brain can feel overwhelmed. This leads to social anxiety, feeling mentally slow or disoriented, self doubt. Am I saying something weird? Avoidance of future interactions, the hidden danger. The less you socialize, the more anxious you may feel around people. And the more anxious you feel, the more likely you are to withdraw further. It becomes a quiet cycle. Isolation, discomfort in social settings, more isolation. This can deepen cognitive decline and emotional numbness because the longer we avoid people, the more we begin to feel like we don't belong. What to watch for? Feeling nervous before even small visits, avoiding phone calls or visits even with close friends, racing thoughts or fatigue after being around people, feeling like you've lost your social skills, worrying too much about how you sound or look. These aren't failures, they're signs your brain is simply out of practice. What you can do to rebuild comfort. Start small. Say hello to a neighbor, chat with the cashier, rehearse gentle social exposure. Short phone calls, light conversation. Set time limits for events to avoid fatigue. After socializing, reflect. What went well? What did you enjoy? Join a supportive, slow paced group, book clubs, senior classes, or walking meetups. Remember, your social strength is still there. It just needs time to stretch again. You weren't made to live in a shell. And if the world feels a little too loud now, it's not because you don't belong. It's because you've grown quiet in the silence. So go gently. Return slowly, but do return because there are still conversations to be had, smiles waiting to be shared, and people, yes, real people, who are better because you showed up. Sign number 7, you begin to feel like you don't matter to anyone, and that thought stays. It doesn't happen overnight. Maybe it starts as a quiet question. Would anyone notice if I disappeared for a few days? Then one day you realize no one's called this week. No one's asked how you're doing. The phone sits silent. And so does your heart. You begin to wonder, do I still matter to anyone? And the more the days go by without a knock, a voice, or a gesture, the more that question hardens into a belief. How isolation reshapes identity. Humans are relational. We discover who we are through reflected connection, through being needed, seen, and remembered. But when you live alone too long, your sense of belonging begins to fade. The brain receives fewer signals of purpose, relevance, emotional intimacy, social reward, and slowly it begins to believe what the world isn't saying, that you're invisible, that you're forgotten, that you no longer make a difference. Why this thought is so dangerous. It doesn't just affect mood, it affects the will to live. Studies show that seniors who feel they no longer matter are at greater risk for cognitive decline, depression, sleep disorders, poor self care, earlier death from preventable conditions. But here's the truth, gently spoken. You still matter. You always have, and you always will. What's broken is not your worth, it's the bridge between you and the world. What to watch for? Feeling invisible even in public, thinking they'd be better off without me, not wanting to get out of bed because no one needs me, losing interest in hygiene, meals, or hobbies, feeling abandoned but not knowing how to ask for connection. These are deep emotional alarms, and they are worthy of attention, not shame. How to rebuild the sense that you matter. Start by doing something small for someone else, a note, a kind comment, a homemade gift. Write a memory or piece of advice and share it online or with family. Volunteer, even virtually, your wisdom is needed. Ask for help or companionship. Being vulnerable opens doors. Say this to yourself daily: I matter, even when it feels quiet. My presence is still valuable. The world is better because I'm still in it, because it is. You are not forgotten. You are not useless. You are not a burden. You are a chapter still being written. You are a voice someone needs to hear. You are a memory in the making and a reason someone smiles, even if they haven't told you yet. So don't believe the silence. Believe your soul, because what you carry inside still has light to give. Living alone is not always a choice. Sometimes it comes after loss. Sometimes it's the quiet result of life moving forward while you remain still. But solitude, when left unchecked, doesn't just affect your days. It reshapes your mind, your emotions, and your sense of self. We've explored 7 quiet signs today: the fading of your voice, the blurring of time, the slowing of memory, the flattening of feeling, the substitution of connection, the anxiety around people, the belief that you no longer matter. None of these are signs of weakness. They're signs of a brain and a heart craving reconnection. And the beauty is this: it's never too late to reach out, to come back, to feel alive again. What you can do today, even one small step, is a victory. Call someone, go for a walk where others are, join a local class or group, read aloud, write a letter, make eye contact, and smile. You don't need to fix everything overnight. You only need to begin again, gently and with love for yourself, because the brain is resilient and the heart is patient, and you, dear one, are still needed here. If this video spoke to you, please don't leave in silence. Like this video to help others find it. Share it with someone who might be quietly struggling. Subscribe to True Senior Wisdom. We're building a space of support, healing, and connection for elders like you. This channel is more than advice. It's a hand reaching out, a voice reminding you that you are not alone, you still matter, and we are still listening. So come sit with us. Let's continue this journey together.